Hey, welcome to this week's podcast where we're going to discuss what to do when your child or your teenager is unhappy or mad at you about a limit that you've set. Because I know that I have set lots of limits in my kids' lives and none of which they've been happy about.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a single limit that I've ever set in my kids' life or a boundary that I put in place that they have at the time been grateful for.
Yeah.
They've always pushed back, and
Yeah.
I think that's normal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is really important for us to remember. We're parents.
Yep.
We're not friends.
No.
So kids don't like the limits we
No.
set, like kids, and it's not about them liking the limits.
Yep.
Especially when most of the limits we're setting are around like screen time.
Yep.
Around
what they can and can't do.
Yeah. Stuff that's kind of... So screen time is very addictive.
Yep.
So generally when we set limits, they do have big responses.
Oh, huge.
Yeah, because their brain's been really kind of activated in all these exciting ways by the gaming or whatever they're doing on screens. And when we set limits, they can't see far ahead. They're like in the here and now, and I'm just enjoying myself and I'm just being all lit up. And then all of a sudden you're
saying no.
Exactly. And, my mates are doing it. And
yes.
They have the perfect things to say.
Absolutely.
And it can feel challenging,
yes.
because I don't know about you, but my kids they used to tell me, I hate you.
Yeah, you're the worst mum in the world.
Yeah,
you don't understand.
Yeah.
No one else's mum's like this.
Yes.
Used to get all that.
Exactly. So it's knowing that this comes with the territory.
Yes.
And it can be hurtful.
Oh, absolutely. My kids have said horrific things to me.
Me too. And it's remembering that they have a young brain.
Yep.
That they're often impulsive, so they'll just say the first thing that they want to say. And that kids can be really manipulative.
Yeah.
They know our weak spot. They know how to kind of twist us around to their point of view or to get their way, really. Most kids from a very young age will do what they can to get their way.
Yeah.
The amazing thing is there's this really great book. It's called He'll Be Okay, and it was written by a woman called Celia Lashley. And she... she worked in prisons and saw what she described as these beautiful young men coming in, 18, 19. They'd made these one-off impulsive decisions that led them into being in jail.
So sad.
And so she got really curious about, what happened to lead these kids to jail. And she went into boys' schools, she did all this research, and she came back to the kids that had parents that set limits, that set boundaries, stated in her interviews with them that they actually felt safer.
Yep.
They liked that their parents came in and set the limits because then they didn't have to with their peers. Because especially with teenagers, like the biggest motivator for teenagers is to fit in. Yep. It's to kind of belong to their other kids their age. And one of their developmental kind of tasks is to push away from parents, to work out how they're different and to move towards what their mates are doing. So for us, that can be really challenging, because we're the ones setting the limits. We're the ones copying all of the abuse, because it can feel abusive, especially I hear from so many parents now how almost scared they get of their boys, mostly when they're asked to get off gaming, because these kids kind of get aggressive just to get back on. So setting limits can feel really challenging, and can lead to these horrible times with our kids where they're fighting, we're having to try to stay calm. But in this research, Celia Lashley found that boundaries were the most important thing in a child's life, and the most important thing you can do as a parent. For me now, with kids that are older, so one's nearly 18, one's nearly 20, I wish I'd set limits
boundaries
earlier.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting now, I don't know about you, but my 20-year-old, who, I mean, she was vicious, like so vicious when she was young.
Yeah.
I can
They
even
know just the words, don't they?
but I'm even
Your
talking
pain
back
points.
to when she was like a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
She was vicious.
Yeah.
And I can remember actually seeking help from a psychologist about her and thinking that the psychologist needed to treat her, you know, but I just needed advice how to handle this child, because she was literally a whirlwind of smart, like just knew how to play me like a fiddle.
They do, don't they?
And it's interesting. So I battled with her all through her lifetime, from like way back then, right through to the teen years. She has not been an easy child to raise. Just at home with us. She's been an absolute angel, according to anyone else in the school, you know, environment. Absolutely. No other issues. Like, we really haven't had a lot of issues, but she's just been vicious towards me in particular. But now, when I used to enforce a boundary, that was when she really lost it. And but now she, as a 20-year-old, and her, you know, brain is obviously a lot more mature, and she's a lot more rational. She actually says to me, you know, Mum, I'm really glad that you didn't let me do this, or I'm really glad that, you know, you said no to soft drinks when I was young, because now all of my friends are addicted to soft drink. You know, she's actually grateful for these boundaries that I've put in place. You know, even the ones around screen time and, you know, that sort of thing. She's actually grateful now. So, you know, as hard as it was at the time, I'm glad that I stood firm with a lot of the boundaries that I put in place for my kids. And like you, I wish I probably put more in, to be honest.
I definitely wish I was firmer.
Yeah.
And for me, what stopped me being firmer is I wasn't clear.
Yes.
So I guess wanting to invite you as parents and caregivers to get clear, you know, what are your values for your family, and what do you want the limits to be?
Yeah.
You know, we're getting more and more research, especially around screen time and how damaging that is to young brains, but also around food.
Yep.
Also around, you know, that teenagers need limits with parties they go to, cars, time they get home, all that kind of stuff. For me, I think setting limits is a real art, because there's a balance. You know, like, you set too many limits and the kids rebel. You know, they just get sneaky. They don't tell you. And I find too many limits often leads to more extreme behaviours with some kids, because they're actually, I guess, when you set too many limits, like there's too many guide rails, kids don't learn that where the risk is. They don't learn how to
fail as well.
They don't learn how to assess. So for me, there's you getting really clear on the limits and you picking your battles and choosing the limits.
I think the picking the battles is a big one.
Yeah,
isn't
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, and it is difficult, because I know I sometimes used to battle over things, and then I'd think afterwards, what did I battle over that? It's actually not that important.
Yeah. And for me, what is really important is that you've set limits, you've chosen the battles, and you never want to, it's not about you having all the power and all the control. It's a relationship. I think this is really important to remember, that it's a relationship that you want to develop over time, where they know you're setting limits in place to protect them and to keep them healthy and safe. They know you're not doing it just because you can. And that you're going to make mistakes, they're going to make mistakes. But for me, in my mind, raising my kids, I wanted my kids to always know they could come to me and they could always tell me. I didn't want them sneaking around. I didn't want them to get into a really unsafe situation and not feel they can call me.
Reach out.
So this is a really important point when you're thinking of setting limits. One, get really clear. You know, how much screen time do you want your kids to have in your family per day? Some parents, it's like no screens through the week. Some parents, it's after dinner, after your homework, then you get an hour. You need to work that out for your family.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with everything as they grow. It's kind of setting limits, but also allowing your kids to kind of have times when they are making decisions and choices for themselves. So I call them safe risks.
Yeah.
If you don't let them do that, then I don't think they develop the capacity to do it when it really matters. You know, like if you don't let your kids kind of progressively grow up and get a longer leash from you.
Yeah.
I think when they are 18 and 19 and they don't have you there, I don't think they've built that decision-making
muscle.
Yeah, yes. To know, that guy's drinking, no, I'm not going to get in that car.
Yeah.
And these are life-threatening risks.
Yes.
So it's kind of setting limits, letting your kids understand why you're setting the limits, and choosing your battles, you know, kind of, and choosing when there is learning opportunities for your kids, not to fall flat on their face, but to realize, man, when I make that consequence, this is the reaction.
Yeah.
And always remembering at the base of it all needs to be the relationship.
Yeah.
So most of the research coming out now in regards to mental health and healthy mental health outcomes for our kids are that they've got a solid relationship with a parent that does set limits and boundaries, but is there for
because
them.
that actually in itself makes a child feel safe, right?
100%.
Because I know when I spoke to the psychologist about my my tantruming 2-year-old, the first thing that she said is obviously she feels really safe with you to behave like that with you.
Yeah.
And to, you know, scream and rant and say the things she's saying, she feels really safe with you. So that safe foundational relationship is, like you said, it's important.
Yeah, that healthy attachment. And that's so true. I'm glad you brought that up. Like that kids will express more when they feel safe to, when they know you're not gonna hit them or lay an even harder consequence, when they're able to kind of express their frustration and their anger, and then you can talk about that, you know, later when they're calm. Like, I saw you were really angry. You need to know it's not okay to treat people like that though when you're angry. So we need to I'm happy to help you or to support you to find better ways to kind of express your anger, where you're not going to threaten to physically hurt someone or do whatever they do. Again, it's an opportunity to teach and to kind of support them, learn emotional regulation skills, learn relationship skills. I think, again, we forget how important relationship is on our whole well-being. And so this setting limits, knowing when to pick your battles, knowing that, say you set a limit that, or you set a boundary of, I don't want you to go to that party, and or I'm going to pick you up at a certain time, or I don't want you to drink, or I don't want you to do whatever they're going to do, and say they do it, and you still want them to be able to come back to you and say, hey, Mum, I know you said not to, but I did. And now I feel really sick and I need you to come and get me. Yeah. You want that as well. And so it's that dance of setting limits, holding boundaries, knowing they're human, knowing that teenagers do dumb things, knowing that in our culture it's almost a rite of passage to get really drunk or really high, or knowing that our kids are going to try things and putting kind of safety rails in place. So I'm not saying we are saying here's the alcohol or here's the weed. I'm not saying that. I'm more saying, because I notice parents where they're just a hard no. You know, you can't do this, you can't do that. The kids do it anyway. They just don't let the parents know. Yeah.
Like you said, there's an art, isn't there? This is such a delicate balance between picking the right battles, between setting boundaries, but also being available to your child if
Yes.
those boundaries are broken.
Yeah,
I
totally.
suppose.
And remembering why you're setting boundaries.
Yeah.
So being really clear in your head
Yeah.
why you're setting boundaries. No, say you've set the boundary now and your kids are really reacting.
Yeah.
So something that's really important and hard to do.
Yeah.
So when our kids get really, we call it dysregulated. So they're losing it, they're chucking a tantrum or calling you all the names you don't like to be called.
And that's actually when I knew my daughter was playing me like a fiddle, was when she was, again, that toddler and having a massive wobbly.
Yeah.
And I think I'd said to her, I'm going to have to call daycare or kindy. She was at kindy, so she was maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to call kindy and let them know we're not coming today because I can't take you to kindy if you're going to do this at kindy. Gosh.
Yeah.
And she just stopped mid full-blown rage,
Yeah.
totally lucid, and looked at me and said, oh, I'd never do this at kindy.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay, here we go. Sorry.
No,
I'll let you get back to what you're
just
saying.
makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as much as possible as the adult, it's important to stay calm and regulated. And it is hard to when they are dysregulated. So you may need to give yourself a break. And again, you're modeling how to deal with challenging situations to your kids.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to say, I can see you're really angry. I need a few minutes to calm down because I don't want to yell at you. I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
So it's really important to kind of validate their feelings. Validation means that you see their feelings. It doesn't necessarily mean you agree with their feelings. So I can see you're really upset. I can see that you want to keep gaming with your friends, and we agreed that you were going to game for an hour on school nights and you're going to be finished by this time. And normally they'll come at you again. It's okay to just say the kind of same thing.
Or for younger kids, TV is another.
Yeah.
We agreed that you only watch the TV till this time.
Yeah. It's just the importance of staying calm, knowing that they're totally dysregulated. They've kind of flipped their lid, as Dr. Dan Siegel says, which means their rational brain is not on board. So when you do talk to them, small sentences, not big explanations of why. They actually can't hear what you're saying because they're in this state of overwhelm. It's more, if you can, getting down to their level. I hear you. It's not okay to hit me. The TV's not going back on. So I'm here for you. Let's take a moment to breathe, and just giving them time, giving their system time to feel into your regulation and to start to slowly become more regulated.
And that's the hard part as a parent, isn't it? You being regulated.
Totally.
Because I know I used to become extremely dysregulated, which I know now. At the time I didn't understand it, but I know now that used to just add fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
Whereas my husband is a lot calmer than I am.
Yeah.
So his responses to my daughter were probably a lot calmer. So hence why her and I butted heads probably more than he and her butted heads.
Yeah. 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 Well, if you think of kids as little nervous systems, and they have kids' nervous systems go up and down a lot more than ours do. They're not as developed as ours. And so they need ours to be more consistent and more regulated. And so them just being around us when we're regulated, even when they're dysregulated, helps their nervous system become more regulated because our nervous systems talk to each other.
Yeah.
So if our kid is kind of really dysregulated and in that fight or flight, and we just stay calm and regulated, generally over time they'll come down to our regulation. And then you talk about all of this way later when they are calm, when everyone's well fed and rested, and you kind of explain, look, this is why I set this limit. This is what I notice happens if you go over it, or and we've spoken about you wanting to feel like you can concentrate in school, or you wanting to do whatever it is that they want to do, feel less anxious, be able to go to sleep.
But like you said, again, I think I probably, when my kids were little, I'm better at it now that they're older.
Yeah.
Obviously, you live and you learn, and as a parent.
And they've
but
got more rational brain when they're older too.
100%.
Yeah.
But I probably used to try and explain my reasonings behind the boundary when they were dysregulated, which doesn't really, is never going to work,
Great
is it?
point. Yeah. When they're dysregulated, it's just holding the no.
Holding the no, yeah. Like you said, short, sweet sentences, whereas I probably went into like a lengthy explanation as to why.
Calm. Yeah. I can hear you.
Yeah.
I know you're angry.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
Just kind of, it's not fair. I know it doesn't seem fair. You're so mean. I know you feel I'm mean.
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's kind of, simple, feeding back to them what they're saying to you, so they start to feel heard.
Yeah.
Because them feeling heard helps them start to feel calm down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So important for you to be clear around your limits and for you to stay calm and consistent in maintaining those limits, which again is so easy to say.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so hard to do. I think this is like the real job of parenting.
Yeah. Is
maintaining limits.
Yeah.
What is amazing is that you start early and you are consistent with I said no and I meant no.
Yeah.
Over time, you get less of those power struggles, less of those. It's just like,
we know she doesn't bend on this.
Yeah.
No, it's true. Kids learn, like they know what they can ask and get away with dad, what they can ask and get away with mum.
Totally.
Like you said, they're clever. They work people out. They work relations out.
Definitely. And what's amazing is when you are calm and consistent, your kids are calmer kids. They're less anxious. They know they can rely on you to say no with certain things and yes with certain things. It's all predictable. And that is so important for our kids, that we're really predictable and that they can feel the parameters and the limits.
Yeah.
That's hugely important. When there's no parameters and limits, it's chaos. It's actually terrifying for most of us.
Yeah.
If you think of you and you're going somewhere and you're like, what's the norm here or what's okay and what's not okay, it's quite unsettling until you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually read that, and this was definitely the case with my daughter when she was little, is that for like obviously my boundaries weren't, I think consistency was my probably biggest issue, was not being consistent. Yeah. And I was, a young mum juggling a million different things, working, and I look back at that time and I, probably set myself up to not be calm and consistent a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But my daughter was fine when she went to school or to daycare or to kindy because they had very consistent boundaries.
Yes.
And as I said, her behaviour kind of took a turn for the worst at home.
Yeah.
A, because she felt safe.
Yes.
But B, also because I probably wasn't holding those tight boundaries for her.
Yeah, yeah. And it's difficult. Like I think for me, I was more unclear.
Yes.
And I was more worried about how me being firm with my kids impacted them emotionally.
Yes.
And
interesting.
Yeah, so I was worried like, oh gosh, I didn't want to hurt his feelings.
Yeah, we all have our things, don't we?
Yeah. And that's important that you listening all know that none of us are perfect at this. It's a real
I was too tired to be consistent.
Yeah, it's challenging. Yeah. I knew I had to be consistent, but I just wasn't clear on how to do it. Yes. And like, God, when is it too much and when is it not enough? And there's so much that you learn as a parent, hey?
You do,
it's a
absolutely.
steep learning curve.
Yeah. But these are great tips because, as I said, I wish I understood the importance of boundaries and I wish I understood the safety that children feel in boundaries.
Yeah.
And I wish I understood how being calm and consistent actually would have benefited us as a family.
Yes.
When I was a younger mum.
Yeah.
I know that now as an older mum, but as a younger mum. So, hopefully this podcast is giving you some guidelines as to how to do better in this regard without making you feel like you have to be perfect, because you're going to fail. Like there's no such thing as a perfect mother or a perfect relationship.
You can just do your best.
That's
and
it.
Keep the relationship as the main
priority
goal. That you maintain that relationship. And for me, I think what came evident to me really early was I regretted when I lost it. So if I yelled or lost my temper, I regretted that.
Yeah, always.
And so I realized that I can step out. So rather than create a power struggle between me and my son or me and my daughter, where they were only little.
Yes.
So, just me being bigger, I already hold a lot of power. I learned not to engage in power struggles and just kind of saying, let's come back when we're calm.
Yep.
Let's take a moment. I don't want to hurt you with my words. I don't want you to hurt me with your words. Let's take a moment.
Yeah, good advice.
Because I always regretted those moments when I didn't give myself permission to just, and to realize it doesn't have to be fixed in this moment.
No.
I think there was a really old kind of parenting 101 that was, you've got to fix it there and then, and you've got to, and no matter what it takes. And it's like, no, that's damaging.
Yes.
That damages their trust in you, your relationship with you. Nothing's worth that. So for me, it's more, okay, he doesn't want to brush his teeth. He needs to brush his teeth. So we're just going to I'm going to start earlier in the day, or we're going to talk more about why, and we're going to see how he wants to do it.
Yes. Which is what we talk about even with food, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's about the long game.
Yes.
It's not about the short game. It's about the long game. It's
Yep.
not about getting them to eat everything you want them to eat that night.
Yes.
It's about working towards that happening over a period of time.
Definitely. And collaborating with them.
Yes.
Bringing them on board.
Yeah.
So I'm worried about how much time you're on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking this is a reasonable, midway. What do you think?
Yeah.
And they can say yes or no. And then you have a conversation around it. Yeah. Which is a skill they need as an adult.
Yeah.
Like it's not their way or the highway or your way or the highway.
And I know with vegetables, we've often talked about saying to kids, look, we're going to be eating, 2 veggies with dinner every night.
Yeah.
So, what 2 veggies, these are the vegetables I've got for tonight. Which 2 shall we cook?
Yep.
Or should I cook?
Yeah. 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 So some kids, like you're talking about your daughter, just have that ongoing resistance and like that persistent pushback. I think it's just important to just keep staying clear yourself.
Yeah.
This is how it is. This is what it's going to look like. So you being really clear on the limits, you being consistent, and then staying simple in the pushback, as in small amounts of explanation, and validating them. I hear you. I know it feels unfair.
Yes.
And we spoke about why we're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there, as I said, in hindsight, there are things I know I absolutely didn't do in the moment when she was little.
Yeah.
But we live and we learn.
We totally live and we learn. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because I think it's easy as a young parent to feel like you've got to have it all together, or you're going to screw them up. Or
I know someone once said to me when I first had Saoirse, they said something to the effect of like, no matter what you do, you're going to screw your kid up. There's no such thing as a perfect kind of parent. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. Because you have all these ideals as a new mum.
Totally.
How things are going to be for you and for your child and your relationship.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always turn out that way.
No.
But it's fine. Like, you're just doing your best.
Exactly.
And it's not always going to be perfect, but
as long as they know you love them.
Totally.
You're with them no matter what.
Yep.
That there's nothing they can do that will stop you loving them.
Totally.
I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
And that the rest of it you work out.
Yeah.
Over the journey, and you overcorrect and you undercorrect.
Absolutely.
And that it's normal. It's humans and relationships, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as much as like I even look back now and I think, God, when I've learnt things about parenting just with, talking to you and listening to podcasts and, reading and things over the years. And I think, oh my God, I royally screwed that up. Like I was just saying with Saoirse when she was little. But you know what? She's an adult now and I look at her and I couldn't be prouder of the human that she is.
Yeah.
And the relationship that we actually have as well now is really strong. It's open, it's honest.
Yes.
We still fight.
Well, that's what...
But, we have a really great relationship.
Yeah. And what creates that
and trust
is the rupture and the repair.
Yeah.
So where you have these clashes and you disagree and you've got to kind of go to your corners and lick your wounds, but then you come back and you repair.
Yeah, and it's funny, I've noticed that the repair process is so much quicker than it used to be. Like the repair process used to take days.
Especially when they're teenagers.
Yeah, but now the repair process for both of us, we just know.
You can own your piece in it.
We both can know what we need to own in our own behaviours.
Yeah.
And the repair is just quick, like we'll blow up massively, but then we're over it pretty as quickly.
And I think just to finish on this is really helpful for kids too when we own, like I shouldn't have yelled about that and totally. I'm really sorry. And I think kids seeing our humanity and realising like, and just that apology, that wasn't okay, what I just did, and I'm really sorry. Yeah, to kind of own our piece in it.
Yeah, I know, and this is possibly like the worst thing. You'll probably tell me I even screwed my kids up more than anything, but one of the things my kids often used to say is like, you're the worst mum in the world. And sometimes I would actually, like if I was feeling up for just owning it, I'd actually say, you know what, I have no idea what I'm doing as a parent. I'm learning as I'm going as well. Yeah. And I'm really sorry if, that it's sad for me that you feel like I'm the worst mum in the world. But I wasn't trying to guilt them.
No.
But for me, I'm quite good at owning my stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I get it. I really shouldn't have done that or said that. I'm pretty good at doing that.
I think that's really helpful.
Is it? Okay.
I do.
Well, thank you, God, because it might come across that I'm trying to guilt them because sometimes they'd be like, oh, no, you're not the worst mum in the world. Like, don't be silly. I lost my temper and I shouldn't have said that. But, that wasn't my purpose. It was like, I actually don't know what I'm doing at this particular moment in time as a parent.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know if this is a boundary I should be holding firmly on or not. Yeah. Because it's not always black and white, is it? No. It's not always clear.
No, exactly. And I think you doing that starts the repair process. Yeah. So they can own their piece.
Oh, phew.
Yeah. Because, we are human. And I think it is helpful for our kids to know, hey, I'm working this out too.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I need you to know I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
I'm putting these limits in place to keep you safe, to try to protect you because I love you.
Yes. I know we talked I know during this you've talked a lot about teenagers because I think that is a particularly tricky time when it comes to setting boundaries, definitely boundary setting. And that's the other thing to think about is, look, to be honest with you, setting boundaries when they're little is quite simple and you should really flex that muscle and get 100%. Good at setting boundaries when they're little because as they enter those teen years, it gets even more tricky because like you said,
definitely
there's a flip side that involves their lives and danger and risk.
Definitely.
So
I say that to friends of mine with younger kids. Set firm limits now.
Yeah, practice those limits because like you said, if your kids know that you hold firm with boundaries when they're little.
And you're fair.
Yeah.
If they know you're firm and fair.
Yeah.
If they know that you're not unreasonable.
Yeah.
And that if they really want something and it's reasonable and it's safe, you're going to say yes.
Yes.
If they know you're fair, it makes them really think when you kind of go, I don't want you to do this. When they're older, they'll go, oh, why? And I'll be honest, I'm not sure about, I just don't feel safe with you staying there the night. Yeah. I don't know those parents and I find if you've been firm and fair and you've said yes when it's really been, when it's been, when you felt safe, I think, you get less of the resistance than when you've got limits everywhere.
Yes.
And so they learn to be in relationship with you through fighting.
Yeah.
Because some kids do that because you don't give them a yes. You just give them the no, and they just learn that this is how I relate to mum.
Yep.
I just push up against her and push, and then we have this big fight and she lets me do the thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to set that up.
No.
Yeah.
And it's best to get those things established when they're little, because
100%.
it is much easier, like I said, to control a small child than, a semi-independent teenager.
Yeah. Or just to get them used to boundaries and limits. And I think that's what a healthy society relies on, actually. That there's boundaries. We respect each other's boundaries.
Well, they're everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah.
You're actually doing your kids a disservice not to set boundaries in place, because when they enter the real world, our lives are full. Our workplaces have boundaries. Yeah. Schools have boundaries.
Well,
society.
If you don't set them at home, someone outside the home has to.
Yes.
And that's actually more painful for your child.
Yeah.
So if the teacher has to set the limit because you haven't at home, and the kid and your child is kind of shamed in front of that class, or they're sent to the principal, or older if it's the police that have to.
Yeah.
So just that's where I loved this book that I mentioned at the beginning, He'll Be Okay, Celia Lashley. She kind of talks about that. If we don't set the limits, then they just keep pushing until they find a limit, because that's kind of what we're wired to do. Who can hold me?
Yes.
And that's what limits are about. Our kids feeling held by us, like I've got you, and this is the beginning and the end. This is the edge.
And I know you work with children who are part of the justice system.
Yeah.
So you must see I suppose you're seeing the end result of children who haven't been set boundaries in their lifetime.
Yeah, and how much terror they live in, actually.
Yeah,
because they never know where they stand.
Yes.
And they've never had a safe place, actually, because they've not had those boundaries. And it impacts everything. Their capacity to make relationships, their capacity to work, their capacity to go to school, their capacity to make choices that aren't life-threatening on the daily. Yeah. Yeah, it's so important and so challenging.
So hopefully we've given you some very good reasons, I think, to try and stay firm and fair within boundaries.
Yeah, so it's getting clear first. Yeah. Getting clear, and then when you're clear and you can have no emotion around it. So I'm clear, this is how it is and this is why, and you've explained to them when they're calm and clear. Then when you need to set it, you can stay without the emotion coming in, because it's like, you know what, this is what we agreed to and this is why we agreed to it. Yeah, so the you getting clear is really important. Yeah.
Again, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of all the times that I set a boundary on the fly in the heat of the moment with lots of emotion, and then afterwards I'm like kicking myself, thinking why, because it actually has disadvantaged me in a huge way, you know, where I've said you're not doing this thing, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I've organised something else for myself, knowing that my child's going to be doing this thing, and now I've just said that they can't do it. And
well, then we're often more extreme in the consequences.
Yes.
And then it's hard to hold the consequences, because when we've calmed down, we're like, actually, that wasn't really fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then, so it's, that the key thing, if you take away from today, is that you sit down and you get really clear.
Yeah. When you're calm.
When you're calm, what boundaries do what limits does our family need, and that our kids need to be really clear on, so that me and other caregivers can be really clear, so there doesn't need to be, so we can be consistent, fair and reliable, so we don't need to get emotional even when they do, because we've all agreed it when everyone's been calm and we're all clear on why we're doing it. Yeah.
Such a great topic.
Yes.
I know I love talking about these things. I know, and we keep going back into it, but we're going to leave it there now. It's become a very long podcast.
Yes.
But hopefully it's been helpful as well.